What's up, everybody? It's Chad. I'm back again with another episode of Ask Chad Grassiologic Take 2, right? We are getting near the end of this season. It's this episode, and next week is the last episode of this season. Me and Gino need a break, man. We're going to take a couple months off, and then we're going to come back in the new year, and we'll have a new season, some new guests, some old guests, to get some updates and everything. And, of course, the legislative session is going to be going on that time, too. But without further ado, thank you so much, Jonathan Sanchez, for joining me today from NNK Farms. It's great to have you on, buddy.
Yeah, so nice to sit down with you, Chad. Really good for us to have a little bit of a conversation and to dig into things in such a, tumultuous time. Things are a bit chaotic in our industry, and in the world around us. But at the very least, maybe through these types of conversations, we could bring some clarity.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm glad that you're joining me today. It's great to finally have you on. As some of you know, and some of you may not know, especially the old advocates, they know. I've known Jonathan for about 10 years. He was a part of one of the original advocacies here in the state and everything. And then, I kind of joined in with them and actually met him here in Las Cruces during one of the events when I, kind of did the first thing with them. And known him ever since. And, so yeah, but for the people who don't know you, haven't had the chance or the honor to, get to know you, could go ahead and let everybody know who you are, what you're about, and all that good stuff.
Well, my name is John Sanchez. I started my public interactions with the cannabis industry in 2016 when I started Enchanted Consulting, where I initially was trying to work with dispensaries or production facilities in the industry to kind of just get my foot in the door in any way possible, but ended up actually helping quite a few patients build their grow spaces and make it approachable for them. So it's just something that I really kind of dug my teeth into and then started to realize some things. And ever since then have been working on creating some clarity, clearing the smoke when it comes to the industry itself. In 2018, when I started really taking off when it comes to sharing information and education, I did a whole year of doing a post every single day for the entire year of 2018, and try to do it as much as possible now. So yeah, traveled around a bit, worked in hemp. Hemp really is the thing that got me, at least some traction when it comes to commercial. And in that way, went to Texas. We harvested the first organic hemp harvest. So really the first cannabis grown commercially and certified organic in the state of Texas. Which was a really interesting and fun experience. They actually won some awards for that flower, so definitely something that I went to go do something, and I felt like we accomplished what I went to go accomplish. And I was really just grow a crop of cannabis in Texas, do it under some papers, and make sure it's legal. I got to it was in Big Spring, Texas, where I was at. I got to walk the narcotics unit in Big Spring through my greenhouse and explain what we got going on and what was happening. So that was super fun. And really, I sat there to be able to grow some cannabis in Texas, and I did so splendidly and with a lot of education behind it. So it was super cool. But then moved to Oklahoma, watched it implode, and came back home.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what brought you back home and everything, because I know you left the state for a while. I just don't know for what, or what you were doing and all that. So, what brought you back home?
Honestly, my grandma. She
Okay.
was in process of dealing and passing away from ALS. And as we know, ALS is one of those diseases that cannabis can have a huge impact on. And in fact, it was quite amazing in that as soon as they figured out what it was and they diagnosed my grandma with ALS, they signed her cannabis card that moment. With the initial paperwork was a cannabis card signature from her doctor. And so that was about 4 years ago, actually closer to 5 at this point, but it was something that I was very happy with and surprised. So I moved back home to spend the last couple of years with my grandma before she passed away. And because, everyone that I had ever spoken to when it came to being successful, and I asked them what they regretted, it was spending the time with the people that they had while they had them here. And so I decided to make that move. But what was cool that I had noticed during that time when I moved, it was the industry, legalization was just coming on a couple years ago, and we were just having a conversation about it. The beginning date was set, and things were moving. But it was really cool to watch the exodus, of people come back, or not. I don't know what's the opposite of exodus, but you know, for us to come back
Migration.
home. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
came back home.
Yeah.
There's so much like myself, Josh McCurdy, a couple other people that had left just to work in the industry, had left the state, and now had an opportunity to come back home and do something that they loved in their own state. I definitely thought that was like a really beautiful thing to watch, because we definitely deserve to be here, and I think we should.
100%, man. And I've noticed that too. A lot of people, after the legalization thing, they came home, and some were in California, some were in Colorado, some Oklahoma, of course.
Yep.
We had people that left the state. I wouldn't say in mass groves, but in quite a few high numbers. But they decided to come home. Which
Hmm.
was even more like you said, interesting and very kind of shows to the character in New Mexico. That this is home. Home is home. It always will be. And if the opportunity presents itself, why not come back and try? And so I kind of feel that's what a lot of you did. So I commend you for taking that leap and coming home. But who wouldn't want to come home to the Mexican food here, though? You know what I mean? The New Mexican cuisine, the green chile, and all that. So
and
who
and
wouldn't want?
and for me, it was also like what really excited me was the culture.
Yeah.
When I left a few years ago, things were a certain way, and they've been that way for a while. And then through all of this chaos, things got forgotten, and to walk through a crowd of people and feel like a stranger was an interesting thing to me. And so it wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but it really pointed out to me that we are in a time of change, and that you know we have to kind of re-understand who we are as a community. And it's something that I believe is important, and culture is important, and re-understanding that, and what does that mean, could potentially be a winning factor in our own local businesses being successful. I definitely think New Mexicans and local people of the valley appreciate that. They appreciate their own culture. They just have nowhere to lean to when it comes to that in our industry.
No, it is. And going back to your point where it was weird to walk into a room and not know everybody because the medical program, it was so small. It was big but small at the same time. And we knew everybody. So yeah, it was interesting to go from northern New Mexico, where actually I'm known more because of the advocacy stuff, and then stuff
Hmm.
being going on down here and people not knowing who I was. And I'm like, well, I've been here the whole time. Who are you? Because you just showed up. And
Right.
so like it was just all like, well, who are you? I'm like, well, who are you? I've been here the whole time. Like, you're the one that just showed up. So
It was interesting, and for me, it kind of like humbled me in some way. I had
yeah.
to like, how can I don't know. There's always a lot of hate going around, so I had to really ask myself, how could I embrace that and not forget where we came from? 'Cause we
Yeah.
could easily embrace it. We see so many people that have such crazy, horrible stories about getting in a business with
Mhm.
certain groups that create either problems within their own community or problems for themselves financially. And so it's just one of those things where it's interesting that there's a lot of hate we can generate, but you know we can learn from being inclusive. And that
Yeah.
like even my own partners, they're an older couple from California that really love the culture and love cannabis and found an opportunity to come out here. And now, we're really blending cannabis into the New Mexican culture the best that we can.
Yeah. I saw a post. I think it was somewhere on social media. Somewhere, there's so many now. Someone posted, the smell of fall, New Mexico, green chili roasting and cannabis drying. So it's like a new set for us. Not just green chili roasting, but also your cannabis drying because it's around Croctober that happens.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So it's kind of funny that we're really embracing it now. But cannabis has been here the whole time. It's been part of the culture, but it's been like a subculture kind of underground thing, and it's kind of taken shape just the past couple of years, and it's changing too, and it's always going to change.
Right.
The medical days, the way that was, it'll never be like that. Like it'll never be the way it was. Having that Facebook group that we had, and the NMCPAA, and us running around with the state and trying to figure all this. It'll never be like that.
Right.
We're always going to have the opportunity to fight, of course. But like the little niche community that we had and everything, it'll never be like that. It's a bigger thing, and it's bigger than us now. And I'm glad, I'm happy that it happened that way, because we needed to expand our culture a little bit more around the state, with all cannabis users. Because down here in the South, we're still kind of figuring it out and getting our culture set up. And it's kind of funny, dude. We're like toddlers kind of, stumbling, and I'm just watching it. And I'm like, this is funny, because like Albuquerque's had a cannabis community for a long time. And down here, it's kind of like, who's my friend? Who's my friend?
Well, honestly, bro, it's changed and it's gotten into that. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think people have been disenfranchised by the whole thing. It's
Yeah.
not just they're that, oh, we don't trust these people or that people. It's like they're just completely done with the whole situation.
Yeah.
Like whether it's
It's true.
the taste of corporate cannabis in their lungs, or just the disregard of people's care. And I
Yeah.
really think it's negative. And like we can talk about it probably to plenty in the community that would believe something similar. It's definitely a negative thing that's occurred. I don't believe it's not undoable. I think we have to remember what cannabis means to us, and like I think those of us that have been doing it for a long time before we could make money doing it, we have a passion, and there's something
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah.
We can't forget about that, and sometimes that takes a little time to get on, like
Mm.
right now people are hungry for it, but they wanted nothing to do with culture last year at the same time. It was like, oh, where's the shiny new thing? Cookies was just opening up. We were getting a lot of different bigger name brands. That's fun. That's a
Mm.
good thing in a lot of ways. During that time and even lately, I've had to ask myself, what would 20-year-old me be happy with?
Mm.
And to be honest with you, cookies and what we're seeing in a lot of different ways, and botanicals down here off of Central, like a lot of these things would be just the best, like we would have felt like we won. Just because we are a little battered in this industry doesn't mean that we shouldn't acknowledge that victory, like yes, it's not how we wanted it. Yes, it's not our names in the billboards, but you know what? It's there.
Yeah.
Like the bones are there at the very least, and we can craft it how we want to, or we can feel bad about it, and we can
Yeah.
be upset about it. We can try to close our doors, and like we could do those things, and that's all well and good. That's something that sometimes we have to do. We have to pull back. We have to understand why we were here in the first place.
Mm.
But I think there's huge amounts of opportunity that we're not recognizing. It's just we all want to do everything instead of the thing that gets us up in the morning.
Yeah.
Do that thing for a little while, and then let's see what happens.
Yeah. Do what you're good at, and maybe you'll fall into something else.
Yeah.
I fell into making hash rosin just within the last year. And me, I love flour. I'm a flour guy.
Mhm.
You give me some flour sometimes too, and thank you for that. But like I'm more of a flour guy. I'm not really much of a hash guy, but I've turned into more of a rosin guy just because of who I've been working with. Like Josh and Jeff. I've been working with those guys. We started out Chris's Craft, and now we're kind of doing our own thing. And I've found a passion with hash rosin. It's almost like you have growing, but then you have growing for hash. It's like a different category of growing.
Mhm.
And so then you have to
Mhm.
go out, and it's more meticulous. You have to catch things at the right time. You're looking for certain things. You're smelling for certain things. They're
Mhm.
even on a microscope level. You go down, you look at the microscope, you're looking at the heads, the glandular heads and everything. How they look on the stalk, the shape of them, all that good stuff. And it sparked a new interest for me and a new love for growing again. And growing is my passion and will be, to the day I die. But what really brought it more and brought more love to it was the hash rosin. And so we have to kind of embrace that stuff too. So yeah, it's always good to get up in the morning and have your passion, but you never know what you'll fall into. Like
Hmm.
you and I have fallen into different things over the past decade. We started out with that alliance thing, the Patients Alliance, and of course it evolved into the other alliance. And then then we get to legalization, the advocacy stuff, and I can still see it in you that that we need to advocate and how to fight. Like you're one of the people that was there when I was already there, because I got started in about 2013 is when I got my card, but I didn't really start get going until 2014. I didn't get with you guys until 2016, and so it took
Hmm.
it took time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad that things worked out the way they did, and they could always be different. But to be honest, I think we did it better than most other places. I hear a lot of
Hmm.
people say, "Oh, it was a terrible rollout in New Mexico. This was so shitty. How did they do this to us?" So I'm like, to be honest, it's a lot better. Like most other states, you had to have a lot of money to even open up. Like
Yeah.
a lot of money. You had to come in with proof of capital. Like
Yeah.
we didn't do that here. Like we're just like, well, it's a business. If you want to open up, you have the funds, go ahead. But we're not gonna like be like the medical days, where it's 80 to 180K just for the licensing for 1 year.
Absolutely. And it's, we it's easy to like poke at the problems, but there was a lot of it that came down to timing, and
Yeah.
that we had no real control over. You
Mhm.
couldn't have controlled the flood from other states affecting what was going on here. It was near impossible. If like the winter storm that happened a few years before that impacted the ability for flood to happen when it did in our middle of the country states like Oklahoma, that caused the delay of where the flooding happened in that area, which then coincided with how our legalization unfolded. The same thing was happening in other legal states. So it's like we walked ourselves into a perfect storm, but it wasn't of fault of anybody involved. We can really poke fingers all we want, but realistic, it was just timing. and
Mhm.
and and we're being tested. Like it's in my opinion, like it should be something that we embrace.
Yeah.
Yes, it's hard. It's
Mhm.
been hard. Like we tried to open up about 3 years ago. We've been paying a license for the last 3 years. We fought the HOA that was at the original spot we were at. We spent maybe 80 to 90K that is now piled up in rolls of electrical wires and lights, and then not even a fraction of what we put into it. But we had to take those lumps to be able to envision what we're doing now. Like
Yeah.
it was something that was necessary, which sucked. Don't get me wrong, it sucked for all of us, but especially my partners. But it really something that we've learned from, and now have tangible things that we can share with others based on that education that we've had to go through.
And you know what? Speaking of, let's talk about NM Greenfire. Let's stop teasing people and let's speak about what you're doing now. What's the new project? What's your new baby right now?
Definitely, NM Greenfire is just something that we made some decisions to do what brought us passion. Like my partners they're from California, growing up on the beach, going to the beach every single day. They have passion in many different ways that translate into cannabis. And to see that when they first came and to be part of that process, I really was enamored by it, and decided to become part of the team. And now we're really, we're building an 8 light situation, like
Micro.
realistically
Yeah.
micro, but on a
Yeah.
micro scale. And it's not even for me, it's not, or for us, it's not even to make an impact. It's to grow the best that we possibly can.
Mhm.
We have a philosophy that we've developed called plant first, and it really has like endowed itself onto everything that we do. So really taking it to the nitty gritty and being able to demonstrate what happens when you completely focus on just these few. Because
Mhm.
the numbers that we've been able to generate in our own private grows, in just the level of quality, but then the actual return that we've been able to produce has just been insane. And when I sit down and talk to people about these things, they sound unbelievable, and I can understand where that's coming from. So what we're looking to do is to put a spotlight on um, modern technology, modern techniques, to where we're utilizing everything available to us to maximize what we can do, to point out certain changes that has to happen within our industry.
Yeah.
There's we can yell into the wind and the storm all that we want, and only a few people will see it. But if we demonstrate it right in front of you, those that are able to see the vision can then jump onto the SOPs and be able to move forward with us in our ambitions that we have.
Yeah.
Being able to provide quality to everyone that we can, and our
Yeah.
genetics are amazing. All of them we test. We test absolutely everything. I mean, you've gotten bags from us of just our personal flower that we've shared, but really those care packages over the last 2.5 years have ended up in many people's hands. Some people
Yeah.
that from just consumers on lunch breaks to people of the industry very interested in what we're producing. And all of it just comes from putting the plant first and doing what's absolutely necessary. I honestly, I'm sitting in an empty room right now. There's some coat racks behind us. There's a few little things. We have a little area where they do some jewelry bit making right now, but the room's pretty much empty, and we're about to start building, and really just to demonstrate some awesome techniques. And then through that process, we're going to make our SOPs available to everyone, not for a charge, not for us to get onto get onto a service with us, but just make them available because people need to be able to succeed.
Yeah.
We're pulling crazy numbers from our rooms, and I want to we want to put that and make that available to people, and share that knowledge so that everyone can catch up, and that so we can have some at least uh, uh, actionable things that we can do to help make us keep competitive edges on what we're all doing,
Yeah.
so that we can survive as the industry changes and evolves, because
So
we're dealing with some big robots that just wander around and step on things that they just don't
yeah.
don't care about, and that's just the way it's going to be. And so we just have to know how to maneuver through that process.
Yeah. 100%. And so, are you guys just doing production right now, or are you planning on a retail or anything else in the future?
So right now, and I don't know how much of this I really want to get into, but we definitely are going to be planning towards our own retail. But right now, we are going to be doing retail takeovers, basically,
Okay.
making our drops available as fresh as they possibly can be, but for only a very limited time. So we have a partner that we're going to be working with the first few drops, but really just to highlight things about cannabis that we don't really see very much. Like we have an original TK cut, and we have a number of TK crosses. We can see that triangle cushion so many different variations within our current market and previous times. So we want to highlight those interesting things. We have the Gelato 41 and the Gelato 33 and a couple of really brilliant crosses of those things, so that we can really highlight what is special about cannabis genetics, while leveraging their growth the best that we can so that we get maximized returns.
Nice. So, what are your numbers, if you don't mind me asking? You mentioned, what are you guys getting per light, and the testing results.
So on average, our criteria on whether or not genetics stay, first of all, one of them is if they're doing 3 a light. Now, it's not always that we're running whole lights of things under CO2, but we are running very accurate calculations that we've done to ensure that when we extrapolate it out, we're able to, these numbers are what's actually going to be coming down when we have, whole sections of these of these plants.
Yeah.
So like, for instance, we have a Purple Sunset by Jungle Boys. That's actually a little bit more of a sativa leaning, so we call it Purple Sunrise.
Okay.
And we would be comfortable to say that that one can do about 5 to 6 pounds a light with CO2. And so we've had, without CO2, it come down at 4.3
Yeah.
without CO2. We've had whole lights of those. That's the only reason why I bring that one up. We have had like the Lava Kush comes down at something very similar. 4.3 is what we had calculated with CO2. We don't have very much that come crazy like that. But then like the Gelato 33, we had it about 1.75 pounds per light. These are 1,000-watt lights. The Hortilux, not the Hortilux, the Lux brand. We have the
Got it.
ones running at the house. They don't, but yeah, so that Gelato 33 has its provenance. It's a beautiful, it's a creamy strain, looks decent, but doesn't yield for nothing, in that sense.
Yeah.
So to me and to us, what we're looking at that as flavors.
Yeah.
So it doesn't completely nix them from our like criteria as far as a keeper varietal,
Yeah.
but it does put it in a position that it needs to have a reason to grow it.
Yeah.
Whether it's in
Mhm.
demand, whether we have a reason to grow it alongside the 41 and potentially the La Bamba, so that we can kind of have a good, interesting conversation between how all of those strains came to be, and then how they're different in their experiences,
Yeah.
yet very similar because of just their genetic profiles. And so, so doesn't mean that it's not going to stay, but we really aim for those heavy yielders that have some bag appeal, some good smell, and some provenance in the genetic profile.
Nice. And it's great that you guys are really focusing on the smell, the taste, and all that, because so many people, especially those robots that you're talking about, they just go off with a high THC number, and
Mm-hmm.
you and I both know THC doesn't mean shit. Of course it has its place, of course, like CBG,
Mm-hmm.
CBN, and everything else has its place, but it belongs together. They all belong in the same place together, not just separated into one. Now, of course,
Right.
there's the rare cases where someone does need that isolated in that particular compound, of course, but it's not all of us. The ones that need it, by all means. But I'm glad that you guys are focusing on that, because we're missing a lot. You know what I mean? We're like, the other day I saw someone make a post on one of the millions of cannabis Facebook groups we have now, and they posted like, where's a good place to get something good? It's not really doing it anymore. And like, I need something with high THC, and there's a few people on there said, dude, stop going for high THC. You're ripping yourself off.
Right.
And what that means, is go for something that might be lower THC, but it will be better quality, if that makes sense. You have higher in the terps, you have a better quality grown product in the first place, better structure, better bag appeal, marks everything on the box that you like, and then it's going to be more of an enjoyable experience, just like what you guys are going to be producing and putting out. It's more, I would say it's a scarcity product, but that's always good to have in a market, is to have that scarcity product, because it's very niche and it's very cool. And when you find it, you're like, oh my God, I found it. It's like a diamond in the rough kind of situation. And with
Mm-hmm.
that being said, where do you guys plan on having it? Are you going to be kind of statewide, a couple places in, a few select cities, or are you going to kind of stay up north?
Right now, we plan on staying at one location here in Albuquerque, and
Okay.
then potentially having a few others, maybe one up in Santa Fe. Um, Really, what NM Greenfire is the leading edge of something a little bit more,
Okay.
and so hopefully as we move forward, we acquire production partners. We're working on building a tissue culture lab so that we can maintain our genetic stock for the
Mhm.
long term and ensure that the cuttings that are going to go into production are as clean and consistent as they possibly can be. Um, that bleeding into people that get onto our growing methodologies and help us fulfill the potential demand that we're creating, because we don't ever plan on, as an NM Greenfire, going forward and doing our own production as far as making it available wholesale. We like what we're
Mhm.
doing. We want it to be niche. We enjoy this process of finding new genetics. I call my partner King Midas on a pretty regular basis because he can take a $500 10 pack of seeds and find a $10,000 cut in it. So it's one of those things that I definitely call him that. So we really enjoy that. We
Yeah.
don't plan on ever going beyond that, sharing what we do, working with production so that we can potentially fill the need that we create. I mean, we get hit up every week. We probably get 2 or 3 people that want product, and we're only posting stuff out of our personal grow, so we do recognize that demand, and we do see it, and we aren't going to leave that unanswered. But we're still, as an M Greenfire, just going to do what we want to do, and it's to produce the best cannabis that we can. And if that means that we're only running 8 lights, it means we're running 8 lights. If it means we're running 30, it means we're running 30. But it's still ultimately to produce the best possible quality that we can. We're working with another farm in Chama to potentially help them with their indoor product so that they can focus in other ways, which the outdoor product that's happening up in Chama and in the northern climate is just it's stellar. And so I really am happy to kind of work with some of those farms to try to get their indoor production viable so that they can continue that process for themselves, but then still getting to focus and growing some under the sun. But really to make it as available as we can. But right now, we're going to just keep it on these few lights and enjoy the process.
No,
If that's
100%,
cool,
dude.
cool with
I
everybody.
respect that. Yeah, yeah. No, that's great. You guys are willing to help other people and other growers. Then that's the best part, because you have some of these guys that just protect their, my precious kind of thing with their grow. It's like, no, you can't know what nutrients I use, even though they're publicly available on Amazon, or,
It's wild.
yeah, yeah. I'm
It's
like, dude,
so
it's not a
wild.
secret.
And it's what the crazy thing is it's like it's so not even a secret for what people who act that way are actually holding on to. Like
Yeah.
it's so so not a secret. I've been doing consulting for a few years in both a few different markets, and what I've recognized is just there's just no secrets. what
No.
what it is that, and something that I try to get as many people to understand as possible, is that it's all a toolkit. No matter the methodology, the application of technique or products or any of that, depending on whatever methodology we're discussing, they're all tools and techniques that we can then use to build the correct orientation of these things within the particular environment that we're working with. So, like, methodology is more part of marketing than it is the actual secret sauce of anything. So it's like that's where some people get super confused when it comes to that. And the more we can really talk about the toolkits that we're utilizing in the applications of production, the easier it's going to be to decipher what's happening, and potentially, when we're talking about it in a larger picture, to be able to fully understand our marketing. What's our story? How does it apply to what we're doing? How does it apply to the methodology that we're applying? And then how can we package that in a way that allows that conversation to be occurring in both our any of our like creative marketing, advertisements, video of any of that nature, or even within the sales process in the retail environments. If we don't have that understanding of ourselves enough, then our packaging doesn't sing it. our conversations that we have with the bud tenders doesn't sing it, so they don't have anything to sing it on their end on what you are and why you exist. So it's like it's
Yeah.
so interesting.
It is, and you nailed it on the head. The marketing aspect, a lot of people are missing. Of course, like the brand thing, and that's one thing I wanted to kind of change for people is a lot of them come on the show and tell people who the brand is, what they're about, like where they come from, versus just seeing the product and going whatever. I mean, you guys are trying to create a customer experience even when the people aren't using your cannabis, and that's amazing.
Hmm.
That's something that I see as a good goal. If I can create a customer experience even when they're not using my cannabis, I'm happy. Like
Hmm.
the customer experience of them just going to my website, something like that, like customer experience of just interacting with us, those are all customer experiences, or being at a pop-up, and showing up yourself, and then and interacting with customers, telling them about your product, go check it out inside, this and that, blah blah blah, here's some stickers. It's all about it, and of course, stickers are, I have so many stickers, dude.
I love it.
Don't get me wrong,
Well,
I love stickers, please, all day, but like I have so
no.
many.
And also I think what we um, need to recognize is that that people need to start to have a reason to buy our product, right?
Mhm.
Beyond price and beyond quality. Quality isn't a feature, right? Sometimes we look at quality as a feature and it's not. It's a foundation, and things should
Mhm.
be effective. And so, like,
Yeah.
when we start to recognize that and start to realize what our story is, it makes a lot more sense. People have a reason to purchase our product beyond price. And it's not
Mhm.
that we're going to merit more just because we have a better story, maybe, but most likely not. At the very least, we create product velocity. And that's something now we're beginning to understand. I've been saying that for a long time, but it's something that now we can understand, because there's probably plenty of product rooms just bursting at the seams. I've seen plenty of
Mhm.
product rooms where it's just totes lining the hallways, and it's their product rooms full. They're working on totes, and there's totes in the hallways. It's because there's no understanding of velocity in what they're working on, right? They're just kind
Yeah.
of continuing on, but not really focusing on moving product, so that because it doesn't last forever. We're dealing with something
Yeah.
that has a shelf life, whether or not, if we want to believe that it's the year on the package, it's most likely somewhere between 2 and 4 months, right? To where the product is at the peak quality and it's
Yeah.
degrading to the point to where it can't maintain its price point. Like that has to be thoroughly understood.
Yeah.
And velocity and managing product velocity is that vehicle. And it's not always price. You don't have to be beaten down by price, but we have to understand it enough to work within its parameters. So,
Yeah. 100%. You said it great there. And before we move on to our next conversation, because these are all great conversations, and I look forward to starting the next one. Where do you see New Mexico going in the next couple of years with the industry?
that's a great question. To me, I think we can look at it multiple ways. I always want to look at it very optimistically. But I definitely believe we're at a crossroads. You know, the market has developed much quicker than what we had initially assumed it would do. The reason for this
I want to set
is
up timeline.
a whole bunch. There's tons of reasons, right? But
Yeah.
regardless of that, it has occurred. So we need to recognize what as a collective we can do to improve this process. Like
Hmm.
this, we need to be shifting the conversation away from closing the doors and how we can be more inclusive.
Yeah.
If we're trying to close our doors, as far as the restrictions of licenses and things of that nature, we're really walking away from the point that's going to help the small business, the micros, the people that are struggling, and banding together and
Yeah.
understanding how we can work together. Now, I didn't realize we've tried to do the, you and me have both been working in this industry trying to motivate and gather people for a decade, and realistically haven't gotten anywhere, or have gotten only to a certain extent. And so what we need to do is be
Yeah.
able to continue that process and become more inclusive, so that those of us who are willing to
Hmm.
understand and adapt can do so. And so, because
Yeah.
we're dealing with juggernauts, cookies. And if we deal with if a glass house decides to come and get involved in New Mexico, these huge juggernauts of money, we're never going to win trying to square up with them, right? What it's if we don't know, O'Doul's is owned by Seven Clover. They closed down the shop that is the O'Doul's that is attached to their office, right? Like that's not sign of strength for Seven Clover. So it's like we need to recognize that no one is actually safe, and that if the only people are safe
Yeah.
are pulling from the infinite pools of money like cookies and things of that nature, we're never going to beat them down at the knees. We can fine them until we're blue in the face and nothing ever is going to occur. What we have to do is recognize the things that they're doing that are effective and adapt them into our applications. And I think what we're about to demonstrate in NM Greenfire is just a piece of that, just a little piece of that whole process. But we've learned that we're going to be blue in the face unless we actually show and demonstrate it. So that's what we're going to attempt to do. I am talking to a few other people that are going to attempt to do something similar, just making an effort to do what you want to do and not what you're forced to do.
Yeah.
Like we feel like we want to do everything, but we can't focus on one thing, but we should really be just doing what we want to do and then coming together in certain ways. And I know that's like such an idealistic way to speak, but if we don't, we're gonna lose.
Yeah.
Like it's just the way it is. We're dealing with juggernauts of the industries. I would even count as grower circles similar, just because they have a footprint that's much larger than the average, right? So there's a few of these people that they've worked in markets with lower margins. California got down to below $1 wholesale. If we believe that we're going to fight them off in any way, that's absolutely ridiculous. So we need to
Yeah.
leverage something else. We need to leverage
Yeah.
what we bring to the table that's beyond just that. And
Yeah.
and that's what we're hoping to build towards. And I believe that's what
Yeah.
we have to do that if we're going to survive, in my opinion.
Yeah. 100%, man. And I couldn't have said better. We got to keep those licenses open. The corporate guys are going to be there at the end of the day, regardless if we like it or not. They exist in every market, and there's always mom and pop niche players still around. And some of them are sought out in their areas, their respective areas. And so, it's going to be great to see that if we are allowed to do it and we keep fighting for an open market, because competition is competition. So before we move on, where can people find you guys online and in real life?
So nmgreenfire.com is one thing that we have, I believe, up, or it's about to be up. All of our Instagram and Facebook, NM Greenfire. Right now, our default picture is just some beautiful roots. We're all about them roots. But we'll be more available as time moves forward. You know me, man. I'm one to make a lot of noise. So when I have something to talk about, I'm definitely going to be making a lot of noise. So don't worry. This won't be our last conversation, and it won't be NM Greenfire's last conversation with the community. We'll definitely be putting ourselves out there in really big ways. I got a lot of really awesome events that I have lined up and planned for our drops, and I just can't wait to be able to share that with y'all. So we will reach out, and we will be available.
Awesome. I look forward to hopefully seeing you guys in Santa Fe for the town hall that we're having on Friday. Great to have your guys' input and just to see y'all there.
Definitely. Absolutely. I think everyone should try to show up. The most beautifulest times I've ever experienced, that brought me to tears, is sitting there and those types of settings, talking and hearing patients at the time share their stories and just be moved, very moving
Mhm.
situations, a time that I hold quite dear. So I definitely
Yeah.
do make my darndest to be there.
Awesome. And thank you so much, man. And if you guys are in the Santa Fe, the Albuquerque area, and you are going to be up in Santa Fe or want to come to the town hall to express your concerns, how the industry is working, what we should do, come down to Santa Fe. It's going to be at the country club there, which is, a golf course. So come down, tell us. It'll be at Friday at 6 o'clock, and we should be there till about 7:38, depending on, afterwards we end up talking to people and networking. But yeah, guys, come on down. This is for the industry. If you're in the industry at all, ancillary brands, you guys are welcome to, lawyers, construction guys, whatever. This is for the cannabis industry, and especially the people that are, licensed in the industry too. If you're a bud tender, come on down. You don't have to be an owner of the establishment or any establishment to come. If you work in the industry, this is for you. We want to hear from you because a lot of this information goes into bills for the legislature. Last year, a lot of our language went into, or a lot of the data that we collected went into some of the bills. So this year with the 60-day session, a lot of it's going to go into a bill. So we'll see what happens, and I look forward to seeing you guys there. Thank you, Jonathan. I look forward to continuing this conversation. So let's jump into it, and let's talk about what the title of today's episode is about, The Takedown. And what I mean by that is they took down that illegal Chinese farm, NNK, in Farmington, New Mexico. And it looks like they've been working on this for quite a bit. I've been keeping everybody updated on that, pretty much the whole year, on this whole story and the situation. If you guys don't know NNK Farms, it's an illegal Chinese farm at this point, but they were licensed. They got their license revoked because they weren't following literally any rule. You can actually look up what they were punished for on the CCD's website. Usually I have that posted somewhere when I post the bad kid list. You can look on there and you can see exactly what they were, essentially charged with. They got a fine, didn't pay it, and then they went and opened up another farm somewhere else, and it continued the issue. So now it looks like something finally happened after all of us, pretty much bitching about it to them for months. There's something that finally happened, and I'm gonna read certain things directly from the article I gathered some of this information from. Of course, I had to get it from there, and of course of some other places. Looks like the state police and the CCD were the ones who did this bust. So I didn't have to deal with the federal government at all. It was just nothing but them two, which is great because it shows people that we can regulate this industry right, by getting rid of bad players like this that aren't following the law. This story gets a little interesting though, and I say that because not only are the owners from China, but now they're gonna sue the state because the state took over 170,000 pounds of cannabis. I don't know if that's dry or wet or what stage the cannabis is in. It just says 170K. So I'm going to go off whim and say it's dry. I mean, it's wet because everything I saw in there looked like they just cut the plant off and, threw it outside. So I'm thinking that's wet weight. But it's still quite a bit, which means they were most likely way above any kind of plant count that we allow in the state. And that was one of the reasons why they got busted the first time, is they're growing too many plants that they weren't allowed to grow. On top of not even having the proper water rights, on top of that, which is just a simple thing that you have to do here in the state to, to operate. Now, did you hear about this at all? Over there in Albuquerque, I'm sure you guys caught wind of it.
I've definitely heard about it. I thought they had dealt with it in some way, but I guess obviously they hadn't, and now they had to go back in and do this. But honestly, I've seen the playbook. Like in Oklahoma, they were busting them every weekend while I was there. Over the last couple of years, every single weekend, something about the same size. So it wasn't like this is like a one-off situation. It's definitely a playbook that I've seen a bunch of times, right, over the last a few years. So, it's a big problem, because it's all going east. None of it's really hitting the market in any way. It's all going east, and it makes it very, not a safe situation. We've dealt with a lot of really unsafe situations in Oklahoma, where it was wild, like wild. Nothing that we should even really get into, but just wild situations.
Oklahoma is a wild market to start out with.
It really was.
They have more water than us, so they can grow way more plants than us too. So that issue is way even crazier. It's like, whoa, we're kind of limited on how much water we have.
Yeah.
So there's that at least that kind of caps us. But Oklahoma don't have that issue, So
no,
they have acres and acres of cannabis,
And the whole northern New Mexico situation when it comes to water and the acequias and how they're managed is just like it needs change. It needs reformation. You know, there's
Yeah.
it needs people that actually care about the people of that area to change. And you know, because who knows what facilitated that type of grow and what facilitated it happening. Who knows? But I don't, I have a problem with the acequias and I don't trust them. At least the people that run the water of northern New Mexico, and we need to reform that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and water is a
anyways,
huge thing. I guess there's another
it's huge.
lawsuit, with Texas and New Mexico for water. So,
And,
yeah, it's always happening. The water is huge in New Mexico just because we lack it so much.
yeah, and drainage too. I mean, like
And
we our water table
mhm,
can't be impacted by the level of phosphates and nitrates that we're going to try to put into the ground. Large farms that don't have any regulation of their runoff is just destructive. You know, it's really something that
yeah,
hopefully as we move forward we're able to understand this a little bit better, and definitely put some regulation when it comes to how this is occurring as far as runoff, and how it's affecting our water table. I know at
yeah,
NM Greenfire we're taking steps to utilize every bit of salts that we put down on plants, whether we pump it out and it goes into a cut flower garden, that we're really expanding upon so that we can handle all of the nitrates and phosphates that our facility produces and actually utilize it in a way that it at least is attempting to have it not go into the ground.
yeah,
So that's its own issue that
yeah.
is difficult to address.
Yeah, because I mean, these farms, they're not using those methods whatsoever. They're illegal.
Mm-mm.
They're not practicing any safe methods whatsoever. If you
Mm-hmm.
guys saw my post and you saw the plants, it's still on the NM Area 420 page. You can look at the plants. Terrible. Of course, people are commenting, making jokes and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong. Some are funny and warranted, but at the same time, like it just shows you what is really out there. With some of these places, these illegal grows. What kind of cannabis really comes from that. But we'll jump back into this. And I'll give the timeline real quick of what happened. So it says in June 2024, CCD performed a compliance check to NNK Equities at 23 Road. It's Waterfowl, New Mexico. And it was determined they exceeded their allotted plant account. Okay. In August, their license was revoked. And then if you go down into September, they had a 30-day temporary restraining order, and it was granted to the CCD, giving law enforcement the authority to destroy the cannabis at both properties. So it looks like they had two properties going. And this isn't the only one going. We have a couple more in the state that are issues. This is just one that got caught and they got shut down finally. So on October 16th, so last month, multiple agencies worked together to eradicate the cannabis on both properties. So this is something that happened a few weeks ago that we're just getting wind of now. And I think it's because they probably had the active investigation going on. They had to make sure they blah, 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 blase, all the paperwork and bull stuff that goes with it. So now we're just getting information. This information just came out on Monday, and it didn't even come out in the news right away. It came out in a Facebook post from the state police, the New Mexico State Police, had a whole huge article telling you all about it. That's where some of this information came from too, was directly from them. And that's where I got the photos too, was from the state police. So the news stations picked it up afterwards. I picked it up probably about 30 minutes, I think, after they posted it. And so I was able to post it and share it with everybody. But yeah, this is something that is great that they shut it down. But at the same time, it sucks that it took so long, and that the fact that it's happening in the first place, because both of them, the company is owned by Irving Lin and Bao Zhu. They're both from China, and they don't speak English. And I guess when they tried to contact them and talk to them, they were like, I don't speak English, so they had to have a translator or something. Now, here's where things get very, very interesting. So they not only got their stuff seized, but I think maybe 3 hours after that news article was published, they announced that they're going to be suing the state because of this for destroying their property. And it doesn't even stop there. It gets even crazier. So their lawyer happens to be an ex-legislator of New Mexico, Jacob Candelaria. And he left the legislature in a very interesting way. So let me back up a little bit. Jacob Candelaria actually was one of the people who helped us pass the CRA, or the Cannabis Regulation Act. He was actually on the floor. I remember watching it because I do watch the legislative session like it's football season. I was watching the legislative session, and after the bill passed, he had a pen on the floor. He wasn't smoking it, but he said, I'm going to go home, and I'm probably going to smoke this whole pen in celebration for tonight. And so he was a proponent of cannabis, and I believe he was a medical cannabis patient before we went, legal. He had a card and everything. There's a few in our legislature that does actually, and in our government in general. And he was one. However, he left the legislature in a very interesting way. I think about a year or two later, I don't know what happened, but he decided to pretty much just not show up anymore. And this was documented in news articles. I watched it live on the legislature when they would do roll call. He was never there, and they would say he hasn't shown up the whole time. He wouldn't answer calls, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if it was mental issues, if there was some other issues, or if he just didn't care anymore. But that's how he left the legislature. So now looking at this, someone who helped us pass the CRA is now helping someone who's kind of ruining the CRA, which is really interesting. I don't know if it's a grudge or if he's just doing his lawyer thing. Because if you guys know or don't know, in New Mexico, I've said this many times, we don't pay our legislators. So they're allowed to keep businesses and have businesses, and most of them are lawyers. So that's where we run into a lot of these weird situations. Even if he was a legislator, he would still most likely be allowed to represent these guys, even though he is a lawmaker. So that was one thing that was kind of interesting about this story, is the fact that not only did they get busted and get their stuff seized, they're going to sue the state, and their lawyer is an ex-legislator who actually helped pass the CRA.
You can go.
What do you think about all of that now? I mean, with like the rest of the story kind of coming out and coming together.
Honestly, that's wild. It doesn't surprise me. Surprise me being New Mexico and how bureaucracy works here. But it's wild. But not at all. Like, it doesn't, definitely not at all surprising. I mean, we had Duke, like, so it's like we know this type of thing occurs, and it's sad and ridiculous. But hey, if they have a legitimate reason, it doesn't sound like they do. It sounds like this is just dog and pony show. But if they have legitimate reason to be filing a lawsuit, more power to them. I love it, honestly. It's somebody back home is gonna call them and say, "What the fuck are you doing?" Because they're pretty, like, that sounds like so much media attention, and not a way that we want to be having attention like that. Like, oh man, like I guarantee you, someone in their family is going to call them and ask them what they're actually doing, and that they should cease doing that. So. Yeah. I don't believe he'll go any further than this posturing, and then fading away from there. So.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way, because it says right here that Candelera, their lawyer, said that the state failed to properly serve them a notice of intent to revoke the company's license, when I knew the company was revoked their license months ago, because they did post it publicly so everybody could see it. So if I knew, then they should have definitely known. And I have no clue who these people are, and they're in Farmington, New Mexico, and I've been there one time. So like, they knew. So now the CCD did return, and they said that the Cannabis Control Division stated that in filings related to the case, that it complied with notice and hearing requirements and had afforded the company its due process rights, which, to be honest, we've all known about this, and it's been public information. So yeah, I don't know what they stand here, but it's their right to use the court system, even though they're not American citizens. But they're allowed to use the court system and sue the government with this. They're claiming that their property was taken illegally, et cetera, et cetera. We'll see what the courts say, but I'm kind of with you. I don't know what foot they're trying to stand on with this, because it just kind of seems like a little ridiculous. You weren't licensed, It got revoked. They told you this has been going on for months, and you still operated, and they finally shut you down. So, yeah, it's a little crazy, but this whole situation is a little nuts, especially, once you look more down at the microscope, what's going on, the lawyer, the situation, them suing the state almost immediately. It's like, whoa. And like, yeah, the news medias, dude, they pick this up like that. It's all over the internet. I can't search New Mexico cannabis without hitting this. Yeah, it's great. So I'm glad that they got shut down. It needs to happen more. There's more the stuff like production in the state like this that's happening illegally. And there's also like dispensaries and other places that are breaking the law too. So, the crackdown is going to start happening, and they're going to start taking down a lot of places like this. So we'll see what happens. I'm kind of, I don't know, excited to see more of these, illegal, especially the huge illegal farms getting shut down like that, because we don't need those running around the state. It just makes us look bad.
Yeah. And
but do you have anything to say before? Go ahead.
Oh
Go ahead.
yeah, I totally do. If a small Chinese lady shows up with a bunch of dude in suits, do not sell them your land. Do not do that, please. Like, I'm begging you. If you do have farmland in New Mexico, this is not a story that I've heard yet, but I know does exist. So, like I said, if a small Asian lady in a black dress shows up on your property with a bunch of dudes in suits, please do not sell them your land. Uh, yeah, that's all I really have to say.
That's true because I've heard a similar story that the same people showed up to a farm in Silver City, and so they're everywhere. So be wary, guys.
No, they
They're
do.
actively there. So
Do
yeah,
not sell those
yeah,
people. Do not sell those people. They will give you a lot of money and they'll open up a briefcase with a bunch of it too. Do not
yeah,
sell it.
yeah,
You know,
100%. Well, that's all I have
regardless
for
of
this story. I'm gonna go to the
yeah.
last one.
Go ahead. No, go
Yeah,
ahead,
yeah.
man.
Regardless, but that's all I have for this story and everything. If you guys want to stay updated on this one and other similar stories, make sure you follow my socials. That's where usually this information goes out first, and then I break it down into more details once I gather it, on the show, that week or the next week. So if you guys want to hear about it first, make sure you follow the socials. Of course, the link and everything is always at the bottom. But anyway, we're gonna move to the very last topic. I'm gonna try to go through this one quick. It's not a very long one either because I'm most likely updating. As you guys know, we had an election. And there was a bunch of cannabis stuff that was on a bunch of ballots throughout different states. We had, I believe, 4 or 5 different states voting to legalize cannabis in some way. We had one voting for medical, and then we had a couple more voting for recreational. Looks like North and South Dakota said no, and it looks like Florida said no, but we'll get to that. But Nebraska, they said yes for medical cannabis, and they were the only one that successfully passed something through a ballot initiative. As you guys know, in New Mexico, we don't have ballot initiatives unless it's for a state constitutional amendment. So we are more than likely having to deal with the legislature, which I think is a better route to go because you have more flexibility and it's easier to change versus trying to change the constitutional amendment every time something needs to be updated. But then again, a lot of states find it easier to go that route. But anyway, so those are the states that passed it. I can see North Dakota and South Dakota, especially North Dakota. I've been there. Minot is not a fun place, and I can see why they said no. It's just cannabis just isn't the thing there. Maybe it will be one day. Maybe if we get federal legalization somewhere down the road, that'll change. But let's talk about the Florida thing. Florida failing. Now, the reason why I want to talk about this is because it was big headlines, for months. You had some of these big, huge corporations backing them. And then, you had this initiative that went in. Then you have, one of the presidential candidates backing it, the bill itself. And then you have a bunch of other, celebrities and stuff saying yes on it, blah, blah, blah. But then you have other people that broke it down, the real advocates, and say, well, this might be a bad bill for us. And it seems that might be the case. However, Florida is a different kind of animal. So in most states, you just need a simple majority for mostly everything, right? Bills, initiatives. Not in Florida. You need a super majority. So instead of 50%, you need 60%. So this initiative failed, or the amendment failed by 5%. They had 55% of the vote. So it was already above the majority number of 50%, but they needed 60 because that's just how it is in Florida. So it failed. Now, in my opinion, I'm glad that it failed because it was just bad legislation. It was written by big corporations. There was no home grows. And I'm sure you and I can both agree, no home grows is just prohibition with perks. That's not real legalization at all. If I can't grow at my own house, then what the hell are we doing? Why am I being forced to go to the store and buy this? It didn't have that and a bunch of other things. It just seemed like a money grab for the big corporations. I think Trueville was one of them and a couple others. What's funny is after this failed, almost immediately, their stocks dropped over 50%. You can see the number do this and it just cliffhangers straight down, dude. So that's funny too. They deserve that because they try to manipulate, a whole state, and thought people were really going to fall for it. Now, if it wasn't Florida, it would have passed if it was any other state. Now, what I'm going to suggest is Florida, you should probably go through your state legislation and start electing candidates that are cannabis friendly, because you're going to keep running into issues like this if you're going to go this whole, initiative amendment route and then going through a ballot initiative. You need 60% of the vote to get it passed. That's hard to do in most states. Because most states, when it does pass, it's usually 57, 55%. It's never the super majority number, very rarely. It's usually just the simple majority. And so to get to that number is going to be, I wouldn't say almost impossible, just more or less improbable, especially with the people that back these bills because they're backed by big money. Now, the same thing can happen in the legislature. You have the big money guys lobbying, this and this and getting what they want. Well, that's going to be up to the citizens of Florida to really speak up and tell the legislature what you want and how you want it. You can always talk to your representatives, call them, all that good stuff. But, I'm glad that we didn't go that route in New Mexico. We went the legislative route, which makes it easier to update the laws, like I said a little bit earlier. If you go through a state constitutional amendment, that means that you have to do it again, and then you have to vote for it again, then you have to wait for an election. With a legislative thing, it's every year, especially here in New Mexico. It's every year we have a legislative session, and something can get changed. Especially an emergency session. The governor can call emergency session. If it's really that fucked up, she could call emergency session. They can go in and fix it, and it's done within a week. And she signs it, and they can do emergency rule where she signs it, and then the next day, whatever or however long they put in there, it goes into effect. So that's why it's more flexible. So unfortunately, Florida is going to have to sit on the sidelines for a little bit longer when it comes to the adult, use, and the rest of the other states that didn't pass it. So we'll see what happens. And this goes to show that, going through a legislature might be the best route. I know most majority to all states have recreational cannabis through ballot initiatives of some sort and not through the legislature. I get it. But a lot of them are having issues with their industry now that it's having a hard time to change. Now, how do you kind of feel about all that going on with Florida and everything, dude?
Honestly, I think we got to forget the FOMO, the fear of missing out. That we have to forget about that. And so just it taking a little bit longer is not necessarily a bad thing. Florida is going to be an absolutely huge market. It's going to be just something like cash is going to be flowing so intensely that I think just taking a little bit of time to figure out the process is just better. I think everybody could benefit from taking a little bit of time to figure out the process. I agree
100% because
there's a lot.
No, there is. There's a lot that goes into it. And I'm the same boat with you on that because, they tried it, they failed, and they could try again, but this wasn't the bill. And don't feel bad for fighting against a bad bill when it comes to cannabis even. I've done it in the past many times. There was one bill that I just hated and I fought tooth and nail against. I was like, no, we can't do this. What the hell is going on? It was that state stores one. They were trying to do state stores. They're state sanctioned, state owned, state ran, state employees, everything. And you couldn't have a regular dispensary within 25 miles of one, which is ridiculous. That pretty much marks out any city in New Mexico. So
it's like a broken system. We look at distillation and distribution of liquor. They have in some states and in other states have had that similar model, and they're moving away from that model. Right, the ABC stores in which is I studied all sorts of libations of stuff. So, but the stores that are the state-run stores in Kentucky, they don't get the respect that other stores receive. And so it's just something that has not worked in other things, and it wouldn't work in cannabis.
No, 100%. Because we don't trust the government, so why would we want to buy government weed? They don't
make any
cheese,
sense.
So I don't want government
weed. And there was
not at all.
In New Jersey for a while, they now it's changed and better, but in New Jersey they had it to where they had to grind all of the flour and dry it ground already for a long time. For their first for all of their medical program initially was that, and it's like that's crazy. Just think of that happening. That would just we wouldn't be doing it. That would just be not worth it. We'd all still be black market because we care about the product too much.
Yeah. If I saw that in person, I'd be like, brother, what's that?
Horrible. It freaked me out. The first time I heard about it, I was like, no. And I did a little research. So I was like, oh shit, they had some fancy government name for it, but that's what you're essentially doing. Grinding it up, putting it on screens and drying it that way. It was probably very clean. Don't get me wrong. They probably had very little mold. They probably had very little of anything. So, dang,
let alone flavor or good Blech. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's pretty gross.
It
So
takes
yeah,
to
I'm
grow
glad we
good.
don't have that rule.
Exactly. To grow good cannabis, it takes caring. Like, care is the number one thing. Like, I don't think anybody even wins if they don't care. You know, we look at the biggest companies in our industry, and the presumed heads of those companies really fucking care, right?
Yeah,
They really care. And we can't assume anything otherwise. That's the way that their company's structured, and the heads of those companies really care. Like Burner, the dudes at Jungle Boys, like those guys
yeah.
really
And then
care
of course
about their
you have
product.
the mhm.
Yeah. Not saying they all do, but hey, if there's
Yeah,
somebody
you know,
that
you have to
cares,
care about your product. You know, if you don't,
they have to. You have to care about the customer experience.
yeah, 100%, man.
Right.
Yeah,
Anyways, yeah.
because not enough people really care about that.
No, no.
Oh,
And
sorry, you
there's a
broke
lot
up a
of
lot.
people. No, you're okay. There's a lot of people that do care, but they want to never kill their darlings. What I mean by that is they never want to step out of their comfort zone.
Yeah,
And if you really want something to work, yes, you got to do what
yeah,
you're good at, but you have to be willing to step out of your comfort zone. And if you're never willing to, nobody's gonna like nobody has like our opinions as professionals in this industry and as operators matters very little to the consumer. The consumer wants what they want, and they're going to go after what they want. And it is up to us to craft our experience based off of what they want. And our opinions don't matter, our feelings don't matter. And once the quicker we get to that point, the easier it is. We really can get to that point, and then we
yeah,
start to actually find our people. We start to find the people that want to resonate with our brand, because we don't have any more desperation in our conversations, and we're able to actually share who we are. People will resonate with that and come to you with bells on. But we'll never get that if we're just
yeah,
bitter all the time.
yeah. And don't beg for the customers to come to you, because that deters them.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
but anyway, man. Yeah. But anyway, thank you so much. That's all I have for this week and everything. I could go on forever, and then we'll be here for 4 hours.
We
But
really
thank you
can.
again so much for joining me again, Jonathan. It's great catching up with you, brother. I'm proud of you. Sticking into it, doing your thing. Starting the whole NM Green Fire thing with the guys. And yeah, I look forward to seeing the niche product. When I go up north sometime. So let me know when that drops.
Heck yeah, we'll do. Bag's waiting for you.
Heck yeah, man. Appreciate it. All right, guys. Well, that's all I have for this week. So make sure you guys like, subscribe, whatever you got to do to make sure you stay in the know. I will see you guys next week for the last episode of this season. So I'll see you guys next time. All right. Shoots.